So you said that your healing journey came from an incredibly dark place. If you can, talk us through that, please.
So in a nutshell, and I'll go through it like very, very quickly, and then we can go back into it more deeply. But in a nutshell, from very early on in my childhood, up until about 11 years old, I was sexually abused by my dad, who went to prison for what he did, and then moved back into the home after he went to prison, because my mum wanted to stay married to him. She wanted to keep the family together. And as a result of that, there was a kind of, well, it was a second betrayal, really, because the safety wasn't there. What you kind of expect when these things happen is that the child reveals sexual abuse, the parent's removed from the home and never comes back, and they never have to deal with that again. But he moved back in, and although he wasn't sexually abusive again, he was violent. So then at 13, so in the midst of my dad being in prison, I was raped by a 20-year-old man. And then at 16, I moved out because my dad had moved back into the home. And at 17, I was raped again by two men. So there was this theme of sexual abuse, sexual assault and rape running through my life, really up until, like I say, 17. And then beyond that, really, because you don't have the language of, I'm going to say normal, but what we perceive to be normal in terms of how to look after yourself and what being looked after even feels like. So you find yourself in more dangerous situations, not reading the red flags, not having those boundaries, and then things go too far and you end up being out of control. As a result of that, I drank quite heavily for a few years and was in a very, very dark place, self-harm, suicidal ideation, and just lived with this embodiment of fear, guilt, and self-hatred. So that's the short version, which we'll dissect. And
I can't not. There's a 1,001 questions, and you almost have to respect everything you've just said by delving into that.
Yeah.
But obviously, we need to move on to the next bit. So,
yeah.
How did you get out of that? Because that feels like that was a one-way journey to, let's be honest, being on the streets, ended up in prostitution, something along those lines. It feels like drink leads to drugs, leads to all those sorts of things. How did you survive and turn everything around from there?
It's very difficult, and I often tell this story and try to make it as easy to digest as possible, because you can't really articulate that experience well without going into the dark bits. And so I'll probably go back and forth to be able to sort of say how I got out of it. When I was sexually abused as a child, I didn't know any different. So although I knew it was wrong and I didn't like it, obviously, and I learned to feel responsible for my dad, because he was violent at times, but sexual abuse is often seen as a violent thing, and it's often not delivered in a violent way. So it's done much more, in my case, which is a bit creepy for people to hear, especially when it's your dad, but in a more caring way. But that doesn't feel any easier for the child. What happens is the child ends up fragmenting and splitting and takes responsibility for the adult, feels guilty and protective, because the narrative wasn't one of, if you tell anyone, I'm going to hurt you. It was more a case of, if you tell anyone, my life's going to fall apart. So now I'm carrying this responsibility. And then we were talking before we started to record about journaling, and I kept a diary throughout the time that I was being abused, or for some of it anyway. And I just wanted someone to know. I tried to tell someone before, it didn't go well, and I kind of retracted it and said I was just making it up. The second time,
it's like it's so hard when you do eventually.
Yeah, because and that's a really good point to make, actually. When children say they're being sexually abused, they're very, very seldom making it up. And if they are making it up, there's something else equally sinister going on. A child never says anything like that. And the reason I say that is because a child doesn't actually have the capacity to think that through and make that up properly. That if they say something like that has happened. So when I retracted that and it wasn't questioned, looking back, I'm 47 to give time reference. It was a long time ago. But looking back, I just think, how did you not push that? Because it was a friend's mum that found out. Well, I told my friend and she told her mum. But it was just it was different time. Everyone always says this. It was a different time back then. But I just know intuitively, if a child says anything to me, I'm not leaving it there. And I don't care whether it was 30 years ago or yesterday. That's the way I feel. But anyway, so I kept a journal. I shared that journal with a friend at school, and someone grabbed it out of their hands. So it sort of went like gossip. It just spread. And then I think to answer the question, because my mum was immediately like, I'm going to stay married to your dad and we're going to stay together as a family. My brain is now at that age programmed to almost find the solution rather than settle into safety and take that big sigh of relief and go, I'm safe. It's more a case of, well, how do I navigate this? So,
where the hell do you find safety there?
There is no safety. That's what I mean. You become a navigator of fear, guilt and lack. And weirdly, that does blend into answering the question, because I became really, really good at managing really difficult situations. I didn't have a choice, and I wouldn't say that's the best way to teach a child.
Is this why you've ended up in this career now, do you think?
Definitely. Because there were times when I was quite severely struggling with all sorts of things. Like I said, I was drinking. I was full of rage, but I'd internalized everything and I was hurting myself. So if I was cutting myself, which I was quite badly, it was to give a visual cue of what was invisible. Because although everybody knew, I mean, this came out at school, so all the teachers knew, all the kids in the school knew, all the neighbours knew, all of my mum and dad's friends knew, but it was just like silenced.
No one stepped in and said, hang on.
No.
No neighbour, no family, even the school.
Even the school. In fact, this is how strange it is. And do you know, I never even questioned it until I started talking openly on forums like this about what had happened. When he got out of prison, there was no one stopping him moving back in. Imagine you've set
children in the house.
Yeah, me and 2 siblings. So
younger than you as well.
One older, one younger.
Is that not a walking red flag?
Yeah. And nobody stopped it. So there was a brief period of time from getting out of prison to moving back in where I think via probation you have to do a certain amount of time being watched, but then just move back in. But it was very carefully cultivated by my mother. I can't ignore that bit, because that is a betrayal as well. There was this desire to move him back in. So this is my biological dad and my biological mum. So my biological mum chooses to bring this man back in. So although he's my biological dad, obviously they're married, so she could leave him. And if you think about someone hurting your own child, there's just no question in your mind, is there? It doesn't matter who it is. They're out. They're probably 6 feet under.
Well, I'm in jail because...
Yeah. It's that simple. Most of us have that very natural, intuitive response. My mum didn't. My mum's very good at coercively controlling and manipulating a situation. In fact, to the point where, because I was very angry, for good reasons, although I didn't have that narrative at the time, I can see that now, because I was angry, because I was drinking, because I was a problematic teenager. What my mum did was she went, look at Ella, she's the problem. So don't look over there where there's a real problem. Look at her behaviour. And so that became what people believed. Ella's the problem. So although they knew, and this is what I mean, she's very good. She's very good at, she's an actress actually. She's been an actress, not famous, but she's done a lot of acting. So she's very good at playing a part. And I think she's very good at that art of seduction, really, seducing people to ignore the problem and to look at me. And that's what happened. So although everybody knew, he'd gone to prison, he'd admitted it.
Yeah, this isn't like an accusation that maybe wasn't founded.
No, he went to prison, yeah. He was convicted, went to prison, admitted it. So he didn't deny it. It wasn't like he went to prison and was found guilty. He admitted guilt. So to give credit, he didn't put me through that whole process of saying I was a liar. My mum, though, she just couldn't be without him. And so then my brain got good at well, if this is really, really uncomfortable, I've got no choice. The only choice was going to care. And from my understanding, from what I'd heard, that was just as bad. People were not treated well in care back then. So didn't have a choice. I was homeless without places to live when I left home. So I was sofa serving. So I wasn't actually on the street, but I didn't have a home. And I got into debt because I couldn't pay bills. I mean, my standard dinner would be like cold baked beans if I was lucky, which I didn't mind. I actually quite like cold baked beans. So I'm not I'm not too upset about that. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of, well, there was no support. So it was a very interesting time because you're having to think of things very, very differently. But you're also, your body adapts to this type of trauma. So now I see it as very maladaptive how I was living, but it was my normal. I don't know what life's like not to have that as an experience. I don't know what it's like to have safety. And even now, my body is very responsive to hypervigilance, but I'm dissociated from that. So I wouldn't necessarily, and you might get this being ex-military, I wouldn't necessarily know that I'm being hypervigilant because I don't connect to the hypervigilance. I just am. But that's all I've ever known.
Yeah, I only get when people go, I notice how much you look around at
yeah.
When I go, I didn't realize I'm doing it.
Yeah, it's just a normal programming. And if you haven't got the other to compare it to, then you don't know what that feels like. So I don't know what it feels like to not be hypervigilant, but I also know how to identify it if I need to, and then I can bring myself out of it if I need to. But I've got to identify it first. Does that make sense? So that's where we go into the way I work now. But the reason I went into this career was because when I had gone to the GP, because of self-harming, having to have stitches and all those sorts of things and having stitches taken out, the GP, who was also my dad's GP, so it wasn't really fair, but he basically told me I was wasting his time. And the counsellor in that surgery saw me. She was just horrible. I don't think they understood the word trauma then, and they certainly didn't have a compassionate approach. So I felt completely on my own. Haven't got my parents. I haven't got, a GP that is my GP and sees me separately to seeing my dad. And then I haven't got any support.
It's a catastrophic failure of every single system in society.
Yeah.
School, family, neighbours, doctors.
Yeah.
Who else? Literally, there's nobody else on the list.
No. So I don't
know how you survived it.
No, I don't. If I'm being honest, I just feel like, and this gets a bit deep, but I feel like I was meant to experience that. I feel like that was always supposed to be how it's supposed to be, so I could do what I'm doing now. Because I do believe, and that might be a story I tell myself, of course, because that makes life a lot easier. But I do believe that it's given me a real empathy and understanding. Not, you've got a very different life experience to me, but I can really relate to that because our nervous system and our brains will have adapted in very similar ways to different types of traumas. So, for example, if people carry tightness in the chest or a void in their above the belly button, in their solar plexus, it's usually because there's been some form of identity taken away from you. And so I can relate to that, even if I don't fully understand it from your perspective. Mm. And I think that all of those experiences, not having a home all the time, certainly not having money, not having safety, not having a loving family, not having people that were willing to see me as somebody that needed to be looked after rather than see me as the problem. Without having any of those things, I've had to learn a different language. And I feel like that language, the language of understanding my body, my nervous system, but also the emotions, and understanding that all thoughts are just an electrical charge which create an emotion which is magnetic, which then creates what you emit to the world. Understanding that, because I've been all versions of myself. So although it was awful, if I was to look at it as purely awful, I don't think that I would be able to be here now, because that was an experience. The suicidal ideations are still there, but they're intrusive thoughts, whereas when I was younger, it was a form of escapism, just like alcohol would be. So I still feel like that was a a clever adaptation of my brain, even the suicidal ideations, because it's just a messenger to say this is overwhelming and you want it to stop, you want the pain to stop. So I've reframed suicidal ideations. I was in hospital a couple of times. It was horrific. Having your stomach pumped and all of that stuff isn't particularly pleasant. And also the shame that comes with that. Because I can remember the nurses being quite annoyed with me. It was almost like I was wasting their time because they've got other things to do. But of course, they didn't know my backstory because you're in A&E and they're dealing with you there. And you don't know what they've had on that shift. You might have had a serious road traffic accident where someone's decapitated, a head. So there I am wasting their time. And I felt that. And I felt that because it was such a familiar story. Ella's the problem. So that then just made it worse. So all of those things that you're going through that other people, I guess other therapists, would never truly understand. There's not much that someone can say. In fact, there's nothing someone can say to me that doesn't just sit and land softly. And I can have that compassionate view and I can also guide them through fixing it. And that is why I wouldn't change anything about that story.
That's powerful. And I don't know if I could agree.
No.
But obviously I've not experienced it or been in the position that you're in now where I'm sure you're probably helping a hell of a lot of people. Mm-hmm. The safety thing, there's a word you mentioned a few times there, and the betrayal, that's the thing that I can't wrap my head around.
Yeah.
As a parent, I have a boy and a girl. My only job is to see them through to adulthood, happy and intact. I don't understand how you could, whether it's sexual abuse or emotional abuse, I just don't understand how you don't want to move them through that in the safest, most complete way you can. Doesn't add up to me.
So I look at this theory. It's a strange theory and it's going to turn a lot of people's stomachs. But there's a theory that says, so if you think about the way the brain develops, so I'm thinking about this from the child's perspective first, but then I'll go into the sort of biological, the primitive side of it from all angles. So the brain develops in sort of three sections. So you've got the reptilian brain, which is the bit that goes into the spinal cord, then the limbic brain, they call it mammalian brain, and that's usually developed by 3 to 4, and then the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive part.
The reptilian brain, to my understanding, is the thing that makes you thirsty. Yes. And keeps you alive. The pure instinctive stuff. So
that's the bit, and that's already, you have that. Like when you give birth, the baby knows immediately to go to the breast. It's just an inborn reflex. And we have things in the psyche, such as a fear of spiders and a fear because they're poisonous and they can kill us. I mean, I don't have a fear of spiders, but a lot of people do, and there's no reason why. Yeah, it's embedded in that reptilian brain. At one point or another, that spider was dangerous to you. So it's that automatic knowingness. And also even simple things like when you watch kids play with a ball, the baby will duck its head as it knows what to do. That's reptilian. The emotional part, which is really driven by pleasure and fear, is about 3 to 4. And then the prefrontal takes until 25. Anyway, the reason I tell you that is because psychoanalytical theory says that up until maybe 3 or 4, we are attracted to our opposite sex parent. And then that gets repressed around 3 or 4. And we start to identify with our same sex parent. So we start to take on their mannerisms and, we become the father or the mother. Not always, but that's the theory. And the reason it gets repressed, and this is my point, is because from a primitive level, if you look at the animal kingdom, they can't procreate together because obviously the children or the babies, the cubs would be deformed. So the young leave and they go off and procreate elsewhere. So I think when it comes to harming or even, especially sexual abuse, we understand that the abuser, be it physically, emotionally or otherwise, my mum and dad, obviously my mum was emotionally she's quite narcissistic, so emotionally abusive and neglecting in her care for me. My dad was physically and sexually abusive. It suggests that they're not in their full core self, that they too have become very fragmented, that the part that is sexually abusing me is not the rational thinker, is not the healthy core self, it's usually that they are externalizing something that's happened to them, where they've felt out of control, where they've been hurt. And because they can't manage their own guilt and shame, they project that onto another. And it's a largely unconscious and compulsive thing. It's not, generally, it's not something that someone wakes up in the morning going, do you know what? I really feel like sexually abusing my children today. Now, I know that makes light of it, but the reason I say that is because so many of us have compulsive behaviours that we go, why are we doing that? And it's a projection of something. It's trying to control something, trying to contain something. And I think with both my mum and dad, that's what was going on. There were fragmented parts of them. With me, I internalized it and hurt myself. So the fragments were attacking me. And that's also what you see in a lot of people, is that they turn it on themselves. So to go to your point of how can someone do that to their own child, and that's what we're here for as parents, is to create safety. I think the point is that we would not have that fragmented relationship with our kids. We would feel like very, very protective. Me probably more so, actually, and that's been a big challenge, because I genuinely can go from 0 to 100. Even if someone says something mildly offensive about my daughter or hurts her feelings a little bit, I have to really deal with that rage that comes up, because I'm actually going to kill them, and they've not done much at all. But I do that because that's how I feel.
Are you overcompensating the safety you have?
Yeah. I can't. I know it's not right, but I say it out loud, and I'm like, okay, she's 18 now. Mummy's just a little bit mad. We all know that. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And then I just kind of let it move through me rather than hold it in. Try and make light of it. And
thank God it's that, and not the passing on of the abuse, because that's a common thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Although I do have a really paranoia about that. Not physically or sexually, but I think I remember being pregnant and my biggest fear that I'd become my mum, because I knew I wasn't going to sexually or physically abuse a child, but I couldn't be sure that I wouldn't be my mum. That was my greatest fear. And now when people say things like that to me, I go, that's a really good sign. The fact that you're thinking that and the fact that you don't want that means it's not going to happen. But that doesn't mean I'm perfect. And I think that's probably the self-punishment still. Have I loved her enough? Does she know I love her enough? Have I done everything right? Because if I haven't done anything right, what problems could she end up with? And if she presents with any form of anxiety or emotional pain or physical pain, I start to go, what can I do to make it better? And it starts to become a bit of an anxiety. And then I have to observe myself doing it and come out of it. So there's steps you can take, but you can't always stop that original cascade of emotions. You have to bring it back down. So it's an interesting process being a parent after that, because I haven't had the teachings. I haven't had, and a lot of people don't. I don't want to sound like this is self-pity. A lot of children, particularly now, sadly, they don't have that safe unit. So when they go on to be parents, if their brains work differently to mine, how do they become good parents themselves? It's a really challenging thing to do, I think, being a parent. In the best of circumstances, it's challenging. So luckily, I feel like I've got that bit reasonably okay.
This realization of, and the empathy that you've got to your abusers is almost difficult for me to understand.
Yeah, that's the most common thing that people say. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people will just go, they did this, they can fuck off, essentially. Yeah. But you've tried to understand the why. I almost don't want to know the why.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I almost kind of just think, draw a line under it and try and move on and not repeat what they did. But I guess to do that, you kind of have to understand why they did do that in a way.
Also, and it makes a lot of people angry, on other people's podcasts, not all of them, but on some of them where I've talked about them in that way with an empathetic view, it makes people angry, even if it's not their story. More so if it's not their story, actually, because I think it's so stomach churning for people to think about. But like I said to you before, I don't have another experience. So I don't know what it's like to have a dad that doesn't do that, or a mum that protects you. I literally don't know what that feels like.
Have you got no anger to them at all?
No, I do feel anger, but it's strange when I don't know if you've had any major injuries or anything like that, or witnessed things through your experience of military. I've become dissociated to the physical side of, just like childbirth, actually. I did that without pain relief, and I can't, even though I had no pain relief at all, I can't really remember the pain. Like, your brain represses certain elements. I could, not that I will, but I could talk you through each episode of sexual abuse. I could tell you from what I remember exactly what happened, but I couldn't feel the emotion now. And there's a little bit of me that's sad about that, because I feel like it's torn away something that I should be able to feel. I should be able to feel disgust. I should be able to feel that anger. I should be able to feel all of those things that other people feel, and I cannot. It's complete shutdown, numbness. They call it dorsal vagal state. And what happens is when an episode of abuse or violence or trauma is so great, your brain goes into fight, flight, or freeze. Dorsal vagal state is when it just shuts down, it collapses the nervous system, the vagus nerve. And in that place, it's like you're playing dead. And I can remember that thought process of just during, some of the episodes of the abuse, just being like, I just want this to be over. I just need to, and also being raped. I've had that as well, where you just go into complete collapse. There's no feeling. It's just a thought of just wait for it to be over. So that's all I've really got, the memory, but without the emotional charge. Now, some would say that's a good thing, but going to your point, I can't feel what you feel about it. I literally can't feel that. If someone did that to my daughter, I would kill them. But I still don't think I can reach the feeling that you would reach. I can only go to rage in that. So if I put myself there, if someone hurts her, I can only go to rage. That's the only emotion I can feel. It's like 0 to 100. Like I said, there's nothing in between. So I then needed to be curious about the mechanisms of the brain and why people did what they did, so that I could make sense of not having another feeling.
Is what was it called again? The vagal
nerve. So dorsal vagal state is about the vagus nerve collapsing. That's the central pin of your nervous system.
So you've got fight, flight, and freeze.
Yeah.
I've been rocketed quite heavily, and that's adrenaline. Your heart rate goes from 60, 70 to about 150, 160. I'd love to have had a heart rate monitor on, because the only way I can describe it is you are lying on the floor with the world blowing up around you, and you are breathing like you've just sprinted 100 meters.
Yes.
But I can feel the sand. I can smell it. I can feel everything about all of that. Is that the difference between the adrenaline? So adrenaline, people go, it makes time slow down, but it means I'm taking everything in 4D.
Yeah, like senses are switched on.
Because I think the human mechanism for this is, if we survive this, we need to remember how we survived.
Yeah, that's right.
And yours is the complete opposite of, this is bad and we don't need to open this door ever again.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So in we say fight, flight, freeze. And there's another one to that, which is fawn, which is when people overcompensate. And like I was talking about, the responsibility for the abuser, which I learned early on, because it would be very much the line of don't tell anyone because this is bad and no one's going to understand. And, the sort of guilt tripping, which I also think came from deep shame from him. He knew what he was doing was wrong. But I don't think he wanted to hurt me, which is a difficult thing for people to get their head, because the action suggests that he did choose to hurt me, but I don't think he wanted to. I feel like it was a compulsive, impulsive, out of control. Other people would argue that, but again, other people weren't there. So I can only go from my experience. I'm not talking about paedophile rings here. I do a lot of work with people that have been sex trafficked and, have been passed around to people that pay for this. So it's a very different experience. And those people are choosing to pay money for a child. This is my dad and his daughter. And it's a very different experience, although often the symptoms of sexual abuse are the same, particularly in girls, but you'll see certain symptoms in boys, certain symptoms in girls. that nuance and that dynamic is different. So there's different elements to it. Some people that are sex trafficked are also sexually abused by their parents, so they've got even more. It is a very, unfortunately, it's a very, very, very common thing to experience.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it is terrifying. Sex trafficking is far more common than people want to think about. But statistically, most people are sexually abused by someone they know. So it's not always strangers in an alleyway. I mean, again, I was talking to some of the girls that I do work with that have been sex trafficked and raped and all of these things. And all of us have got more than one experience. That's why I always talk openly about the 2 later experiences of rape, because if you are sexually abused and not safe in your home, you are more likely to be in a violent or sexually abusive situation again later on. And that is just something that we have to talk about more.
What's the mechanism for that? Is that you fleeing what should be your safe haven in the first place, or wherever you're going to go to is a downgrade in terms of safety and decision making anyway? Yeah. And is that just leading towards more bad decisions because of that?
Well, there's a theory that talks about, and it's Freud's theory actually, that talks about repetition compulsion. So this bad thing happened to me. I haven't been able to resolve that thing unconsciously. And remember, the unconscious brain-body system is 95%, between 90 and 95%. So our cognitive consciousness is only about 5-10%. So unconsciously, you're driven towards people. And it's really difficult to say because people don't want to admit that they've done it, but it's a fact. We are driven towards the magnet. We are all magnetizing. That's why I mentioned before, the thought is electrical, creates the emotion, which is magnetic, which creates the frequency we emit. And that is electromagnetic. So then we are drawn towards a magnetic that fits our experience. And what we're doing is we're going back into a situation unconsciously. I'll keep saying that.
You're not choosing.
You were not choosing. We're unconsciously drawn in. Now that's a lack of boundaries, a lack of red flags, but also that magnetism, the sort of negative charge that creates a similar situation. Because if we can just resolve it this time, then we're okay. Then we're good enough, or then it's not our fault. So if we're drawn to someone who's dangerous and we can stop them from doing that to us, then we've got control.
You've won.
Yeah. So that is going on in the background as well. But also key, just to keep it simpler, if your own dad is belting the shit out of you, sexually abusing you, if your own mother is saying, well, that's okay, you can move back in once he's done his prison sentence, you can't necessarily feel what safety is. So when you're around someone that isn't safe, you can't go, oh, that feels unsafe, so I'll stay away from you. You don't know what safe feels like. That's why I keep referring back to that. So a lot of women,
feels like
boys, yeah, it's familiar. And don't forget, unconsciously, our system chooses familiar because going back to efficiency, which is what you were saying before with the adrenaline response, we need to remember all this information. Our senses are on overdrive so we can recall this. If you're in a familiar situation, we are more efficient. We know what to do, where to go. Obviously, it's maladaptive. But again, as a child or a young person, you don't know it's maladaptive. You've got no frame of reference. It's only when you get older, and going back to the point about the prefrontal cortex executive function, that's not fully developed until 25. So you haven't got the full ability of wisdom, hindsight thinking, logical thinking, rational thinking. You've got some cognitive ability and some complex thinking, but not as much as you need. So when all of those awful things were happening in my life, it was before my prefrontal cortex had developed, which then leads into the brain damage that's done because your brain, or the executive part of your brain, is developing around complex traumas that are ongoing.
So what steps did you take to turn that around and stop that descent?
It's been a bit of back and forth. It's not been a straightforward path. It's been I
think that's allowed.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's probably how it's going to go.
It's been a bit of a nightmare. It's been a challenge. So key points, needing to navigate an unsafe space gave me a brain that was very good at tuning into other people. So, of course, when and I am going to answer this question as quickly as I can, but before you're sexually abused, and I suppose it's the same before a big blast, you suddenly become aware of the tiniest sound, the smallest movement. Just before that bad thing happens, there's this moment of...
In hindsight, because of the memory, I think. I don't think you're aware of it as it's happening.
I think in my case, I probably was. So, for example, if my mum and my siblings were out, well, not always, my siblings sometimes were there, but particularly if my mum went out, I'd be thinking, I think something might happen tonight. And she was always out because she was always rehearsing. Remember I said she was an actress? She was always rehearsing for something. So evening, she was hardly ever there. And then you'd be just looking for behaviours. And you would notice those small changes in just eye movement or the way he'd smile. And then it would be the way he would slightly longer look at you. You know, obviously, we all know what it's like to feel a certain way sexually. So you pick up on those signals, and then it would be the footsteps, the breathing, and you just know this is what's going to happen. And if that door handle goes, you know, on your bedroom door, you just know. And so there's never a question of, oh, this is probably just going to be a night. It was more a case of, so you're always hyper attuned and you learn to look for it. So you become good at navigating the small details. You become good at joining dots, which again has become very, very useful later on in my job, because I've got to be able to quickly get people through that first 2 sessions to start planning what we're going to do to fix it. I didn't have that bit, but I learned all the tools to give that to people quicker. So that's one of the tools that I got from that. And then I guess not having safety, I really wanted to feel safe. So I was looking for it in various different places, local pub, friendships that I'd have, always feeling like the odd one out, never really feeling like I fitted in. And then when I was raped, it was in the park opposite where I lived. I just thought, I am either going to get killed or I've got to change something. And I didn't know how I was going to change it. But that thought occurred to me, like, this is...
That's a very clear thought in that sort of moment.
Well, without going into too much detail, when I was raped, it was late at night. I'd been to a club. It was a friend of a friend, this guy, one of the rapists, and I was getting on really well with him. It wasn't flirty as far as I was concerned. The way I observed it was we were just getting on really well. He offered to walk me home. We were going in the same direction. It wasn't that far from where I lived. We get halfway. There's an opening in the park where there's a phone box. We get halfway and he says, you know what, let's call a cab because he's got a bit further. I'll drop you off and I'll carry on. And then he called a friend, not a cab. So when that car turned up, I knew, again, going back to that hyper attunement, I knew what was going to happen. I tried to walk away. They pushed me up against the wall. What happened, that happened. I then walked home after it was finished. Again, went into that dorsal vagal collapse, numbness, just get it over and done with, just wait, no screaming, no fighting. Walking home, just got into bed, but I was covered in blood. So when you wake up in the morning and you see, most people, you see in the films, people get a shower straight away. I was exhausted. That dorsal vagal collapse, playing dead, because that's what an animal does when a predator comes along and they can't run and they can't fight. They play dead and they hope that the predator will move on. I must have stayed in that state of dorsal vagal collapse. So I didn't have anything left in me. And also where I was living was a bedsit with a shared bathroom. And I didn't want to go into the shared bathroom because I didn't want anyone to see the blood. So I just left it. And when I woke up the next day and I saw how much blood there was, I was just like, okay, this is, I'm going to get killed.
How old are you at this point?
17.
Fucking hell.
Yeah. So, and that was after years of this type of life and not having the support and actually having adults around me at the time that not blamed me for the abuse. They didn't not believe me because they couldn't not believe me because it was out there, but they didn't help me. That some of them were trying to be helpful, but they were supporting my mum. So I think they thought they were helping the family stay together. Again, she sort of coerced this thing, but they weren't pulling me to the side and going, oh, can we do anything to help you? Because we don't know what to do. It was more a case of pray for your dad. You know, he didn't mean to do what he did. And, you know, we've got to forgive him and all of this stuff. And so you get drawn into that. So a lot of my empathy comes from literally the training. the training, the messages that I received.
Manipulation, I think.
Of course, it is a form of manipulation. I think some of the people that were genuinely trying to help my mum because they cared about us, the only route in was to help her. They probably didn't want to overstep the mark, because if my mum had said, which she can do, by the way, she's someone that can cut you off without a thought. If they'd have overstepped the mark, she could have cut them off and they would have had no access to see if we were okay. So with some of them, I feel like they were doing that because it was the only way to stay in our lives. With others, I think they were just manipulated and believed whatever narrative my mum span.
Did you have no relationship with your siblings over this?
I do. It's a very strange. I mean, I dealt with my sister, my older sister, lots of different reasons as to why. We have a very different, which I'll come on to with some of the work that I do. We have a very different view of things. And I'm not going to slate her because she was not much older than me when this was happening. So her brain's also developed around it. My younger brother, who, again, I've got to be careful how much I talk about them, but we have a better relationship, but it's very, very distant. It's hardly, I mean, I might see him 4 times a year, and I think he carries a lot of shame. That they have a relationship with my mum and dad. I don't have a relationship with them now. But it was 10 years ago that I stopped talking to them. So I did play the game for a really long time. But I didn't realise I was playing the game. I thought I was doing the right thing. 10 years ago, my dad went for me, physically leapt out of his chair at me in front of my daughter, who was 8 at the time. And that was it. I think because I was so protective over her. And even though I don't even know if he was going to hit me, I don't know what he was going to do. It was after a heated conversation I'd had with my mum, and he leapt out, and it was what they'd always do, is they collude. So he leapt out of his chair, and my nervous system obviously remembered that because he'd done that many times. And my daughter being there, I literally was like red rag to a bull. And the sound that came out of my body never came out of my body for myself, but because she was there, that was it. And that was the last time I spoke to him. I did continue to try to have a relationship with my mum after that. So there was a period of a few weeks we didn't talk. I wrote them a letter because I felt like I needed to say everything. My mum wrote back. We saw each other a few times, and then she basically told me that she didn't want anything to do with me. She was divorcing me. So actually she cut me off, not the other way around. I've often told the story like I cut them off because I kind of originally did, but then I let her back in, and then she had the final word, which is typical of a narcissist.
That's insane.
Yeah. So she said to me, I don't want to be your mum anymore. That's it. Our relationship's over. But she waited to come back in after I'd shut them out.
I was like, wow.
Yeah. But that then, of course, that then you either sink in that and stay indoors with vagal collapse. To go to your point about how you come out of all of that pain, my brain has to work in a very strategic way. And so those strategies that I put in place to, I'm either going to be killed or I'm going to get better, what are the things that I can do? They also apply to how I look at other people, even if they are the aggressor. And so when you're coming out of that dark place, you're taking it step by step. I need to get a better job. Maybe I need to do a different qualification. Maybe I need to stop going to that pub. Maybe I need to start walking to work every day instead of getting the bus. Maybe I need to start eating different foods because I want to look different and feel different. And I actually end up losing 8 stone because I was heavily, heavily overweight. So this weight gain, which had started in childhood, was obviously a protective shield to stop people seeing me. So again, small things, just started to lose weight and make those changes that then lead on to other opportunities. So it's a domino effect. It's not one straightforward, how do you fix it? It's making small choices every single day that lead on to bigger opportunities and bigger experiences. But you have to have a moment where you go, something's got to change. And then you have to be able to go within and understand what's happening in your body, because your body blocks you more than you realise. So that's where the neuroelectrics method was born from, really, is having those experiences of understanding everything from a lived point of view and then studying it all as well.
I'm glad you said dominoes, because I find that that's massive. It is just 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 little dominoes is where change happens.
Yeah.
What was the first one? The first one being the decision, I guess.
Yeah,
what was the first action that you took?
I think it was as simple as, I'm going to walk to work every day. And it was...
To lose a bit of weight.
To lose a bit of weight. Because I realised that I really didn't like the way I looked. And I was very good at pretending that I liked the way I looked. So I started to think, actually, radical honesty. I don't like the way I look. I don't want to stay this way. Because I feel like that fat, because that's what it was something that I was carrying. And I didn't think this at the time. I didn't think in this way. But looking back, this is what was coming through, I think. That fat was a representation of me trying to protect myself. And I thought, if I keep carrying this, then I'm never going to change. Because it's like I was carrying the abuse. I was carrying the rape. I was carrying the protective shield that was actually just, wasn't working, was it? Because here's me being abused for years, and then I was raped and raped again. So this fat wasn't doing me any favours. In fact, it just became an identity, and I wanted to shed that identity. So the walking every day and then making choices to eat. And I actually did Weight Watchers at the time. But I didn't ever go to classes because I didn't want to be in front of people being judged for how I look. So I couldn't think of anything worse. Problem with that is that because I didn't have a proper structure, and this is what I try and give people with the work that I do with them now, I ended up being almost anorexic. Because again, you want it so badly, but you don't have the safe boundaries. So that's really, really important for people. Yes, we can have the domino effect, but do you have the safe boundaries? What are your boundaries? What's your structure? What's your routine? I didn't really have that. So that's where it went wrong. So again, by having all those negative experiences and then going to that place of anorexia, bulimia, binge eating, I learned, it's because I didn't have that support network, because I was so socially anxious at the time, but no one would have guessed that because I was so good at masking it. So it's learning to see that in others and bring it to the table. Whether that's your friend, your family, or if you're a therapist, just bring it to the table and say, I see that you've been losing some weight. Oh, do you want some support? Do you need a gym buddy? It's offering that so that they have that accountability. Just simple things.
You spoke about a little bit on the science of stuff. Brought Einstein up. I think that's the first time Einstein's been brought up on this podcast, by the way.
Oh, good. I like to be the first.
And you spoke a little bit about electric signals. I read something a couple of weeks ago, which was that human hearts emit a frequency. And when humans are within a certain distance of each other, hearts can feel similar frequencies, while some people you can go, don't get the right vibe from them. It's like an actual...
That's your electromagnetic field.
Sounds like woo, but it's some science behind it.
So let me break this down. And actually that really leans neatly into this whole method. So the neuroelectrics method is insight and then somatic awareness with subconscious work. That's basically it. But I'll break that down.
We might need a dictionary for some of
that. I'll say it simpler. Insight and understanding the body, so where the body keeps the score, which is a great book if you want to read it, and then also dealing with the part of the brain that is running on the unconscious all the time, so getting into those parts.
On the unconscious, one of the therapy sessions that I had, I did nearly battle one of my therapists. I did Military Veterans Society.
Okay.
They were brilliant. And then I was only allowed a certain amount of sessions with them, and they gave me an NHS one.
Very different.
Very different, to the point where I left.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
But there was one thing that I did on Zoom with the guy that I had, where he actually made me understand something. It was the second session. I tried to kill him. I never killed him. And he explained when something traumatic happens to us, he said, try and think of it like crazy paving, and the way that you're putting the blocks down is how we understand something. And when you get trauma, the blocks didn't go down in the right way.
Yeah.
And the reason why sometimes we get flashbacks and things like that is because your brain needs to put them down in.
It's trying to put order into place where your body doesn't have it.
Yeah.
And your mind doesn't have it. So to go to the point about the heart frequency, and actually that brings us neatly into how this all works. The frequency of your heart is about 60 times stronger than the rest of the frequency of the body. So those electromagnetic waves, they are much stronger, the heart resonance. The energy there is just richer, which makes sense as to why when we feel happy or content or we're looking forward to something, we can feel almost like that fluttering in the heart. That's the energy in the heart, just sort of...
Isn't it nuts that we probably only discovered that in the last 50 to 100 years? Probably.
Mental.
But people have been writing about that for probably thousands
of years. Ancient philosophies have known this stuff. I mean, neuroscience is a really new science, but all of those, the Native Americans, the Eastern philosophies, the Stoic philosophers, they've known all of this stuff forever because everything is in nature. You only have to look outside your window to see how we work. It's all there, and they were studying because they weren't distracted, so they were studying nature, and then they were understanding. Oh, that's how we. So the philosophy came from what they had in front of them, which is far richer than what we've got today. I mean, there's a lot that's good about technology. Obviously, we're here today because of it, but there's also a lot of distractions. And these, thousands of years ago, that they were discovering what the universe wanted us to, or God, whatever you want to call it. They were discovering that because it was in front of them, and they were watching, observing, which is what we do very little of now. But yeah, so the heart resonance is really, really powerful. My hairdresser the other day, quick story, the salon that she was working for closed down, but she didn't know that at the time, obviously. So she was called for a meeting, and she thought they were going to talk about downsizing the salon or moving it. And she went, it was only when I got to the top of the stairs for this meeting that I knew. And she went, why was that? And I said to her, because you could feel the energy in the room. And it wasn't until, because it can be 10 feet around us, our energy field. It wasn't until you were within 10 feet that your energy, your intuition matched their energy, and you just knew that it was over. And she was like, oh my God. So that's just an example. But
sounds like woo, doesn't it?
I know, but it's so true. Your intuition, now everyone's talking about AI, your intuition is the greatest form of intelligence that you have. Nothing will ever beat that. AI will do everything, but it will never match intuition, because that's, like we said before, it's embedded in the psyche, it's embedded in our soul, it's epigenetic. We carry, and this isn't just woo-woo, this is proven through clinical studies. Now, all clinical studies can be disproved. We'll go back to Einstein. Einstein's theory has never been disproved. The idea of relativity and the way energy is redistributed, it never ends and it never begins, it's infinite. It's never been disproved. So when we go to the understanding of epigenetics and the code that is passed down through the genes. So why is it that some of us look so physically the same as our grandparents or our great-grandparents? Because epigenetically we carry a code which allows us to look that way, but we also carry that in our emotions, in our intelligence, in the way that we move, in our mannerisms. And we may never have actually sat in a room with that person before, but we could be almost identical in many, many ways. But it's also the same with things like how we process information. It's so many things, and trauma gets handed down. You look at, well, certainly in your case, you look at some of the traumas that World War II, World War I, they get carried down through. The PTSD is now going to shape the code, the genetic expression, through the DNA. It gets passed down, and now the grandchild has higher levels of stress.
Was that where being scared of spiders comes from?
Yeah, but that's so much more ancient. But it is there. It's coded into us. So
we're scared of monsters, probably because someone in our lineage got eaten by a tiger at some point.
Yeah, it will be. And we're supposed to be really aware of our surroundings, because obviously primitively that's how we stayed alive. So if there's a strange noise outside your house and you're going, what's that noise? It's not because you're paranoid, it's because your brain's doing what it's supposed to do. But if you get stuck there, going back to those, to trauma, it's because your brain hasn't been able to understand and recalibrate the nervous system after a trauma. So it's frozen in time, and it's sort of circulating like a carousel. And it's like return to sender. When you send a letter and it comes back, it's coming back to you all the time because you've not been able to desensitize and reprocess it, which is where some of the techniques that I use within neuroelectrics comes from, all born from techniques that already exist, but just merged together in a really simple way, EMDR being one of them. But you mentioned earlier that you've had therapy, but you haven't had EMDR, which is a really common treatment for military because obviously it was designed for acute trauma, for those big one-off incidents where you talked about flashbacks and things like that. It was designed to desensitize the brain and to unfreeze the person from that moment. And the reason for that is that when you have an incident, when I have an incident, it happens to us. So say you're 26. How old were you when you were rocketed?
I did 3 tours, so from 22, 23, 24.
Okay, so let's say you're 22 and you're remembering something. You go back through the eyes of the 22-year-old. So however old you are now, yes, you've got almost like a witness to that, but you're viscerally, so your nervous system somatically responding to the memory as though you're there. It's why I mentioned earlier that the emotions have been taken away from me, because I almost can't desensitize to something that I can't feel, which also then means that I don't have the same boundaries and so on and so forth, what I was saying before. So there's maladaptions that are made. So in your case, you'd go in, view it through the eyes of the 22-year-old, and then what you would do is you'd play that a few times over and you start to track in the body what you're feeling, what emotion comes up with that. And then what I do with neuroelectrics is sometimes prior to doing that, we use hypnosis just to get you into a really deeply relaxed, safe state. The body is now in a nice balanced alignment, so you're already feeling quite safe. Then you go into that, and then I make suggestions and storytelling. So hilariously, sometimes someone's had a really awful trauma, and when they're starting to recall the trauma, I start telling them a funny story. And whilst they're holding the image of something pretty horrific in their head, I'm bringing in something that's making them laugh. So now what's happening is the memory is being linked to and anchored with something that's funny and silly. Now people go, well, how does that work? When you experience that trauma at 22, the brain places an emotional charge with the trauma. So imagine you're putting it in the filing cabinet of your brain. There's the incident and it is now filed with that emotion, fear, whatever. And you stay frozen there. If it's something that's overwhelming for the system, you stay frozen there because, as you were saying before, you need to remember it in case it happens again. So you must remember it exactly as it happens. But then we learn and we know that that's no longer useful to you. You don't need to remember that anymore. So we change the emotional charge and we use bilateral stimulation. So we naturally do that in REM sleep, left, right, left, right, left, right with eyes, but you don't have to use eyes for EMDR. You can use audio tapping, physical tapping. And what happens is you bring the memory while they're tapping or whilst they're listening to the audio tapping or while they're moving their eyes. You can use all three. You can confuse them. And then you're bringing in those suggestions. So now the memory is here, the emotional charge of being silly is there, and the brain literally remembers the memory from the last time you recalled it, not the time that it happened. So now you're recalling it with laughter. So the emotional charge has changed. And you do that again and again and again until the body is no longer charged with that emotion.
I've always thought about, supposedly we refresh every cell in our body every 7 or so years. Right. How we don't lose, how do memory survive?
Yeah.
And I think that's where memory gets warped.
Yes.
At times.
Yes.
And I guess that what we're doing there is actively trying to reframe and morph a memory.
Yeah, and the brain is so clever and it can be manipulated. Now that goes to a really important point of going back to Einstein's relativity.
3 times.
I know. I am impressed with myself. I had a goal. It was to say it 3 times. I've done it. Hurrah. Going back to that point, that whole point that he made and that whole theory is about your reality is how you observe it. It's relative to your observation. So you and I could be in this room together and both of us could leave. I could go, that was the best podcast I've ever done. And you could go, oh my God, I'm exhausted. She was horrendous. It's exactly the same situation, but our observation of that reality is what we take with us emotionally. So that's how we remember things. We remember things more viscerally, cellularly, because the cells are our mapping. Our fascia is what links all of us together like a spider's web. That's either going to tighten up or be relaxed. So the body's going to remember it. And when we recall today, one of us is going to have excitement and happiness, and one of us is going to be exhausted and, tense, maybe. But again, If I then go back to your question about how did you fix things, I started to visualize that version of me losing weight. I started to visualize that version of me getting a different job. I started to visualize that version of me setting up a business. I started to visualize that version of me having a beautiful daughter or a beautiful child. And what happens is the more you visualize it, the more you're going to fire those neurons in the brain, fire them together through repetition. They become wired together. They become stronger. They become more automatic. They become part of the unconscious. They become autonomic. That links to the nervous system. So now your brain is linked to the nervous system and it's automatic. So not only am I now visualizing, I'm creating, I'm wiring, I'm changing the magnet of my body because now the emotions are different because I believe it can happen. And then guess what? The magnets that we spoke about earlier with the repetition compulsion where I walked into dangerous situations, now I've reset the magnet and these opportunities suddenly appear. It's only because I believe they will, because I've trained the brain, just like you would if you were learning a language on Duolingo. You practice again and again and again and you get better and you become more fluent in that language. You practice again and again with visualization and you become more in tune with the magnet that is waiting for you. All of the possibilities exist in the quantum arena. They're already there. It's just whether you choose to shape them, create them. The possibility of lack and hatred and rage is also there. I could choose that if I wanted to. I can go into that angry place. You asked me earlier, do you have anger towards your mum and dad? Yeah, I do. I just don't observe that. I acknowledge it. I'm mindful of it. I don't push it away. I say it's okay to be angry, but I want to be over there and I want to look at the fact that I'm grateful that my mum went through that labour and gave birth to me because I really feel that this experience that I have here is so rich and the job that I get to do is so powerful. I love it. And I don't love it because I'm helping people. I love it because I'm working together with people. We're meeting each other in the middle. We're aligned. And through that alignment, I'm learning from them and they're healing themselves. And that's a really powerful energy. And that's what I choose. That's what I choose. And that's my reality. And so the other stuff is just part of a story that got me to where I am today. It's not good and it's not bad. It's just the way it was for me. And I don't have that compass of, well, if it had been like this, it doesn't matter because it wasn't like that. Instead of saying, I wish it had been like that, I now go, I'm going to create something like this. So that's what I've done for the last 20 years. I just keep creating more and more stuff. And I never fail because I rehearse it. I mentally rehearse it. But going back to that little girl that kept a journal about what was happening in the home, that journal became something that stopped that abuse. When I journal now, I journal in a way that's either brain dumping, so I need to get it out of my head because my head is always full of stuff, or it's like, okay, that visualization, write it down. And I'm writing, well, I've written my second book. It's soon to be published. It's called Letters to Myself because I feel like some of us are too shy or ashamed to talk about the things that we want to achieve because we feel like we're going to be judged and maybe people will laugh at us and go, well, that seems like a wild idea. I don't think you're going to be able to do that. You know, keep yourself.
It's a very British thing.
Yeah. Whereas when you write a letter to yourself and you go, this is what we're going to do. And it's like all the parts of me come together and this is how we're going to do it. And everything I've ever said I'm going to do has happened. Every single thing, good and bad. And by the way, I use good and bad loosely because I don't believe anything is good or bad. I think everything is just a rich experience. So when I say good or bad, I'm using those words because I know people will make sense of that. But yeah, everything I put my attention to becomes the reality. But you have to practice. You have to use your journaling as a daily intention tool. You have to move your body. You have to hydrate. You have to eat well. And you have to make those choices, not because you want to be thin, not because you want to be beautiful, not because you want to be the most successful, although they can be secondary. It has to be because you want to have that experience for yourself. Because when you have that experience for yourself, when you observe that reality, you emit that frequency and you become magnetic. And that's not in an egotistical way, but you draw in the people that are your people, which makes life so much easier. Rather than trying to fit in, you become what you want to attract and you are surrounded by people that get you. And then you can start feeding communities. And I mean that in every possible sense. And I think that's what you were saying earlier about your daily walks. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, entirely by accident. Don't know where it's a phenomenal community, and I'm sure probably quite a lot of them are tuning in and watching this. So there's bits that we've touched on in the morning walks, which I've written down to speak to Ella about. There's a lot that you've just mentioned there in terms of like, probably call it something different, but you use positive affirmations. I say like positive self-talk. It's the same thing. I say a to-do list. You call it journaling. Now I brought mine up here because I've literally got my pad down here. This is literally my journal or my notebook.
With a very, very fancy pen holder.
It's a pencil case.
I've never seen anything like that in my life.
It's a waterproof one because it's like outside.
I love that, and I'm going to get one. Where did you get it from?
It's a Right in the Rain one.
That's amazing.
The problem with these books is, right, they don't have a pen holder. So I buy these, but they look rubbish, and also these always break on me.
They do, yeah.
So I bought this, and keeps.
So did you actually type into the internet a pencil case that attaches to my journal?
No, I've got loads of Right in the Rain stuff, so I'm on like their mailing list. So when
wow.
They was like, we've just released this, I was like, that's a bit of me.
I've never seen anything as cool as that in my life.
So my journal is literally my to-do list. And I said to Ella before we started, because I wanted to talk about journaling, mine is literally, I write everything down in here. So like I've got, what's this, from 21st of July, flying out, 12:35, Terminal 2. I put my flight numbers in, the arrival times. I'm a bad nerd for this sort of stuff. I've got then presentations that needed to be done, lay out clothes for the day in the gym. Like I literally put, my whole thing goes into this.
That's really good. You do it because you'll forget if you don't do it.
No, I do it. I get dopamine from that.
Taking it off. Yeah.
And also, I will forget.
Yeah, so two things.
Yeah. But I get a bit of clarity out of that. I do this the night before, if I can. I actually try and do a week in advance. So there'll be bits that I need to fill in that I'll go put that down in there. That needs to go there. And I've tried doing digital ones. I've had every app that anyone's ever made. But this beats absolutely.
Good old-fashioned. And there is something about that, by the way, just to be a complete nerd. When we write things down, our brain connects to it because it's the hand to paper movement. It's that
works better than the text apps.
Because it's a natural thing. We've been making things with our hands since the beginning of time. So when we're journaling, the brain remembers it in a very different way. That's why writing it is much more powerful.
I think you connect to it a little bit better than you do when you're on your phone.
There's nothing nicer, and people that journal or do to-do lists or whatever you want to call it, we all relate to this, that brand new pad feeling. Wow.
I got a new one.
See? It's that little moment of excitement in your eyes.
We are about to crack open a new pad.
That feels good, doesn't it, in your hand? Just knowing.
We've got fresh stickers to stick up as well, because, it's got to be like...
See, that is exciting. I'm excited for you. That is exciting.
Probably a little bit more aggressive than the stickers should be.
I don't know.
Hoist the black flag and start slitting throats.
Okay, that is quite aggressive. Okay.
But, so you call journaling, and I've always had a real kind of visceral response to anyone where I've been, like, you watch all these Instagram CEOs spend 15 minutes journaling and gratitude thingies, and I just think, no.
Yeah.
I can't.
Are we talking about Stephen Bartlett here?
Not necessarily, no.
Because he's one of my big bugbears.
Is he?
Yeah.
He's coming on this day.
Say it again. Honestly. Yeah. Oh, right. Hello, Stephen.
I don't know if he does that. I've never noticed that. But no, it's usually the ones in Dubai, to be honest, that are talking 15-minute doing, and you just, I don't get, I've never tried, but I also couldn't ever see myself being like, here's what I'm grateful for. I can't even write that. I don't.
Tell me why.
I couldn't say, we're going to get psychoanalyzed here.
I'm really interested.
I don't know.
Because it's actually
doesn't
really
feel practical to me.
What, to be grateful?
Yeah, it almost like doesn't move the needle. Like I've got shit to do rather than smell the roses.
I know what you mean, because actually, although the language that I use, I try and simplify the language, as you can see, because there's been times when I've said words and you've said, I think we'll need a dictionary. So I try and keep it as simple as possible. And then once you're in the chair opposite me, I can start to teach you and educate you a bit more about what things actually mean deeper. The gratefulness, though, I know what you mean. I do have a bit of a strange feeling towards the word gratitude as well. And it's not because of the word gratitude. And I think it's what you've just said there. It's the type of way that it's being promoted, because it feels very insincere. I think that's what it is. I think there's a lack. And I very rarely, you won't see me doing any videos or talking about, let's practice gratitude. I just find it really insincere. And it's copy paste. So I think, if I'm right, that is probably your problem with it, is that it's not, it feels like someone is just looking at what somebody else has done, thought, oh yeah, that makes sense, I'll say that too, that got a lot of likes. And I do think there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of inauthenticity, I think.
There is, whilst they're saying that they're authentic. Going back to my point about Stephen Bartlett, I don't dislike Stephen as a person, but I find some of it to be very staged and very rehearsed. And although I think, obviously, he's amazing at what he does, like in comparison with my, on average 11,000 views on YouTube and his millions, some would say that I've got no right to comment. But I think my point with Stephen is that I don't feel like it's 100% genuine. There was a video of him once in a gym, and he just happened to be being filmed at the time. Now, maybe he's always being filmed because he's Stephen Bartlett. Maybe he's literally always being filmed. But someone comes over to him to thank him for his journal that they'd got. And it was all just very like, oh, hi, Stephen, I just wanted to say thank you for your journal. And I thought, Stephen's on the rowing machine or whatever it was. And he just happens to be being filmed while this gentleman comes across and just happens to have this speech about how grateful he is for the journal. And I just found it insincere. And I think that's why I can relate to what you're saying about gratitude. However, instead of naming it, it's just that feeling of, what are you actually really grateful for? Because sometimes it's hard to get out of bed, especially when you've not slept well. And especially if you're in that frame of mind, you haven't observed reality as something that you can build and elevate and dream about. Your reality is really tough. And we know that happens a lot with a lot of people. That's why people take their lives, because they just cannot believe anymore. They can't think rationally.
Go back to the moment where it all turned for you. The rational thought that you had there almost is irrational.
Yeah, it is.
So to have the level of clarity that you had at that moment.
Yeah. But I think...
And I know when people... So I lost nearly £100 myself.
Yeah.
Most of it in the last year, really.
That's amazing.
From July-ish.
What, from July 2024?
Yeah.
So you lost £100 from July 2024?
Yeah. Well, till about February. I've been at this way since about February.
That's incredible. So that's not even a whole year.
It was about 8-9 months.
And then you've just maintained from then and bulked up a bit.
Yeah, I started doing weights because I thought I looked ill.
This is what happens when you lose a lot of weight. It's unfortunate that you just don't maintain that nice physique. You have to work even harder for it.
I've talked about identity before, and I think that's one of the most powerful things is I've rediscovered my own identity, which is just, I'm in the gym 7 days a week.
Yeah.
15, 16 hours a week now. So but this is my authentic self rediscovered, I think.
Yeah. Or at least that's how you observe it at the minute. And that's what I mean about observing your reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the point was we were trying to make.
We were talking about, let me go back there because I've got the archives of my brain. We were talking about gratitude. And you were saying that it felt insincere.
Yeah.
And I was saying, what are the things that you're grateful for? And you said, let's go back to when you made that irrational thought that you had.
Yeah.
But it was actually quite a rational thought, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the point we were trying to make now.
Well, we've just gone over it again.
Yeah, I think having that thought that you had then, and that was it. So I've lost quite a lot of weight in the last year, and I get a lot of people saying, how do I start? And the weight loss happened in a year, but the start was 3 or 4 years before that. So, and this leads me on to actually the misdiagnosis point, which I've got, which wasn't planned actually, but I got diagnosed with quite severe PTSD.
Yeah.
I actually still think it's slightly misdiagnosed. I don't think I've not got PTSD, but I don't think it's quite as severe as what it was made out to be. I don't feel like I've done anything to have enough severe PTSD, if that makes sense.
Well, you've got a bit of survivor's guilt then, probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
I think I've got TBI.
Yeah.
Because I did get my bell rung a few times and my testosterone hit the floor. My testosterone was it would have been low enough that I could have competed in the Olympics as a woman.
Mm. Wow.
Full beard and everything.
Bit like me then, before I had a shave this morning.
So sorting out my testosterone levels, I had the therapy, and the therapist said, get your testosterone levels checked, because she's seeing a lot of veterans with like...
really low, yeah.
So I did, and I was like, oh shit. So I got on TRT, and then I got an operation to sort my calves out, and it's been like dominoes, just one thing after another. And then the positive self-talk came around about last summer, after I spent a week with a guy that's probably a little bit American in a lot of his ways, and a little bit cringe sometimes, but mad effective with it.
Yeah.
Because they're all a bit giddy, and
they are, yeah.
But it was effective. And then I quit Red Bull, and the Red Bull was a real big domino. It's like 1,000 calories a day I was having in Red Bull.
Yeah.
So no, don't change my diet. Don't have to do anything to the gym. Just started losing weight by not doing that every single day. And then built a bit more on top of that, and it compounded into losing nearly 100 pounds.
My question would be, why was your testosterone low? Why did you have tightness in the calves? Because that is a system issue.
The tightness was compartment syndrome, which was chronic. So that was just
why
an
was
issue.
that?
Born with it, but always dealt with it. When I was lighter, it wasn't as much of an issue.
Why were you born with it?
It's genetic.
Why is it genetic?
Oh, I don't know.
This is where I always go back to, instead of just looking at the framework, because you talk about misdiagnosis and diagnosis. We can overdiagnose and we can understand, if that means anything. So in other words, if you look at, I was diagnosed with ADHD after also being diagnosed with PMDD, borderline personality disorder, CPTSD, literally everything, because I fit so many frameworks. The thing with something like ADHD, and we'll come back to your points there about testosterone, because I think it's really important for people that have also experienced it. With all of those diagnoses, they're all saying the same thing. This person can't regulate their emotion. This person is seeking to escape via, whatever form they can. Mine was alcohol. Sometimes it's drugs. Sometimes it's other things. They've got a brain that cannot rationalize, and all of these things. And then obviously when you look at PMDD, which is a form of PMT gone mental, that is obviously to do with your female hormones. Now, two things to say there, leaning into the hormonal conversation. Women produce their hormones through their ovaries and through their adrenal glands. Men only produce their hormones through, their testosterone comes through their testicles. So we have 2 points where we are producing those vital female hormones. Interestingly, cortisol, adrenaline, and all the chemicals that go with that can really infiltrate and destroy the alignment of female hormones. So you'll find that children, particularly that have been exposed to chronic stress or chronic trauma, end up, girls, having difficulty with their periods, and certainly with their PMT or PMDD. They get diagnosed with something like that. My question is, all right, but what's the root? And it's the same with you. What is the root of the tightness in your fascia? What is the root of your testosterone dipping? Well, obviously it's trauma, stress, and I would say epigenetically as well, you're probably carrying stress through your ancestors. That's why your body, if you go to the 2013 study that was done on epigenetics, they looked at Holocaust survivors and their grandchildren, and they found that the Holocaust survivors' grandchildren had higher instances of stress, anxiety, and depressive disorders than the other group that were perceived not to have gone through trauma, that the grandchildren didn't. So we know that things are handed down, and that's only looking at the mental health side of it. That would also apply to physical health. So some of these things are carried, those stresses are carried through the system, the nervous system. The cells remember everything. Everything is ancient in terms of what we can't see. So when you go to tightness in the body, it could be a stress in early pregnancy, where your mum was stressed and that got carried through to your development, and your fascia, as you're building as a baby, starts to hold on more. These are just really simple ideas, but it makes a lot of sense. So when we diagnose people, we have to recognize, and I as a psychotherapist will recognize, the diagnosis is a framework. What's the root? Let me understand you as an individual, because yes, your endocrine system isn't working properly, but guaranteed the primary reason will either be chronic stress and trauma in your own life, witnessing it in the home when you were growing up, or it will be epigenetic. And we have to work out where it comes from so that we can, yes, fit the framework. If some people definitely need medication, other people definitely do not. Some of those people that definitely do not are being put on medication just because no one knows what to do with them. So when we are diagnosing, so going back to the ADHD, I do believe that it's possible that being sexually abused as a young child meant that my brain adapted in such a way that it now twins and mirrors ADHD. Do I think I would have had it if I wasn't sexually abused, if I didn't live in that chaos? I'll never, ever know. And it doesn't matter. What I do know is that there are ways that I can work with myself and others that perhaps don't need medication. So instead of pathologizing everything, look at the root. Now, in your case, you probably, like you say, you took TRT and it's definitely helped. But how much attention was paid to the root? And that's what I'd be interested in. That's where EMDR, neuroelectrics, blends these methods to not necessarily separately, because I think we have to, I've got a multidisciplinary health clinic. So I'm the director, I own that place. So we work very holistically. We don't just go medicalize it or put it into the complementary health section. Sometimes you've got to do both. But most people aren't getting that full, broad view of themselves.
Is that a misunderstanding or a lack of time with like GPs and things like that, where they can't, I've got to get you in and out in 6 minutes?
Oh, yeah. I don't blame the GPs, and I certainly don't blame nurses and doctors. I blame the system. The system doesn't allow for that. Going back to the ancient philosophies, you know, you look at traditional Chinese medicine. They have been looking at things deeply and holistically for a very long time. I've looked at a lot at Chinese medicine because I think fundamentally they look at the energy in the body and they look at how the liver's functioning. They look at how, and also they don't look at foods. For example, if someone's constipated, glamorous subject, but I'll bring it up anyway. One of the things that they'll ask is what's your diet, and not to see what nutritionally you're eating, although that is important, but people that are constipated should eat warm foods. And the amount of people that are constipated that live on salads, and they need warm foods because it helps the movement and the energy in the body. They talk about a lot with Chinese medicine, sort of mold and the way that the body sweats and the way that the food that we should eat. People avoid bitter foods, but actually some of the bitter foods that we eat will actually benefit us because they clear things out. So it's a much more holistic view of what the energy of our body needs. And yeah, I think that's what our Western system, it separates it into medical, emotional, but it doesn't look after either of them very well anymore. But it's a government issue. It's not a doctor issue.
I went to a screening of a documentary called In Waves and War. We recorded this last week. It came out Monday on Netflix. And it's a gentleman that I know. And one of his best friends that he was in the Navy SEALs with, and his wife. There was a bit of a low moment involving a gun and a bottle of whiskey that led his wife to be like, you really need some fucking help. It's gone beyond everything now. And she'd been looking at hallucinogenics, and she put him on Ibogaine. Yeah. Or she sent him to Mexico to do an Ibogaine thing, and he came back completely brand new. And the documentary is about a couple of them going down to Mexico to do an Ibogaine and a DMT thing, which looks so fucking mental.
Yeah.
But they're finding like this is incredible sort of breakthroughs. Have you had any sort of experience or anything with that, or looked into?
Lots of people. I haven't tried any of the apart from mild mushrooms. I've tried cybacillin in microdosing, but I've not done the big kind of experiences with different types of mushrooms or medicines like ayahuasca and all these things that are really popular. And I think some people need to do it and some people don't. That's the thing. And I think everyone goes, oh, I know someone that's done ayahuasca, or I know someone that's done MDMA, psychotherapeutically. And I'm like, that's really, really great, but it might not be for you.
Yeah.
So what we need to do, I think, again, is to assess from working with someone, do you need medication? Would it be beneficial for you to go down a more alternative medicine route? Would it be beneficial for you to just go to the gym and move your body a bit? Because actually the more time you spend with someone, and this is why the relationship's so important, fundamentally you build the relationship before you build the solution. And that's why, I mean, I'm multi-model trained. I was interested in having the clinic because I didn't want to just be the psychotherapist. I wanted to work with other practitioners that worked on the body or worked with the gut. Or
how much is the gym, like, walking prescribed?
Well, people say...
Or should it be?
Well, it's funny. I am often an accountability partner for my clients, because if you could say to someone, you need to increase your exercise, and they'll go, yeah. And I'll go, well, why don't we do a, couched 5K together? I genuinely do that. I say, let's be accountable together, because I want to see you win. And I know that if you've got no one to be accountable with, and some people, as going back to your point, I can't remember if you were recording or not at the time, but going back to your point, some people don't have anyone. Now, I'm not traditional in my approach to therapy, and some people would look down upon that because they would say, well, where is your boundaries? Where are your ethics? But I stick to the code of ethics. My code of ethics say, do your client no harm. My form of therapy is holistic, it's inclusive, and it's more than just talking to people. It's about getting into, doing those shape-shifting trauma treatments. But then the transformation must be about a sense of connection and community and accountability. So you can prescribe it, but actually, are you, the doctor or the therapist, actually doing what you're asking them to do? Because they often haven't had that model to them. Why should they do it if you're not? So I always think that's really, really important to bring that into the conversation and to say, well, okay, if you don't want to do a couched 5K, how about you just do 60 squats in the morning every day? You could do 30 when you're brushing your teeth. I don't know if you've ever tried to do that, brush your teeth and squat at the same time. It's hilarious. And then you could do another 30 while the kettle's boiling. Just do that and do that for 2 weeks until you feel like you've got that nailed. And then you could add in 10 push-ups. And then you can add in 10 steps. And before you know it, they've got a nice little morning routine going on. So it's, again, domino effect. But they have to understand why they're doing these things. Why are you going to take mushrooms? Or why are you doing MDMA? Or why are you going to go and do ayahuasca? Why are you going to the gym? And I know it's a really basic one, and I almost cringe saying this because it's, you'll see coaches everywhere going, the really important thing is the why. And they start to do a massive piece on Instagram about it. But essentially, do you give a shit about yourself or not? Because if you don't, I'm going to help you to feel that. And then when you feel that, then we're going to implement some of these things. And right now, you ain't going to believe that you're going to feel anything about yourself at all. But I promise you, give me 6 months and your life will look completely different. And I say this to you with complete conviction. I have seen people completely change their lives. Of course, there's the few that don't. But I have got a very American approach to therapy. It's not 6 sessions or 12 sessions or 20 sessions. You keep coming if you want to. You don't ever have to stop. If having that accountability, if doing some of this work, if learning how to breathe properly, if learning how to do bilateral tapping on your own at home, or self-hypnosis or meditation, or going to a soundbar, if these things are helping you to stay firmly grounded, for you it's going to the gym, then let's sort it out, because you could have a life that you love. It's all about how you observe it. My job is to get into their subconscious. My job is to get into their trauma and transform that so they can observe reality differently.
Yeah, I think once you understand it, you can do a lot with that.
Yeah.
There was a mate of mine that I watched the screening with. He was SAS. He had a bit of a funky time, should we say. And has had, a suicide attempt and quite a lot of things go west in his life. And we went to the bar afterwards, and I was like, because the DMT is literally toad venom.
Yeah, that's right.
So I was like, so you're going licking a frog then, or what? And we had a bit of a chat about it the other night, and we met up for a brew the next day. And I said, what are you thinking? Because I was actually put forward for a psilocybin trial in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
And then the funding fell through.
Ugh.
But I actually don't think I need it.
No, I don't think you do.
I think I did, but I don't think I do, which shows that there's more than one path around the mountain. And the lad I was chatting to, he was like, I don't think I need it. The Ibogaine, the DMT stuff. He went, I think there's people I know that do, but I don't think I'm one of them. And I think that's the game, is because I think this documentary is going to be huge.
Yeah.
Like I said, it came out Monday.
Yeah.
This is coming out Thursday. So people might have already watched it.
Yeah.
If you've not, I would recommend watching it.
Oh, definitely.
I sat there in tears for 2 hours, partially because I know one of the guys involved in it, but it was very, very close to home.
Yeah.
And I thought, there's going to be so many. There was a minister from the UK government there who was asking about it, because there was a Q&A with the director and the two main people afterwards. There was a guy asking seen to be asking questions from the UK government. And I'm thinking, this is going to end up becoming some treatment that gets offered to servicemen. And I can see mixed results with it, because I don't think everybody needs.
No, they don't.
One size fits all thing.
I've got a friend, actually, ex-military, was in an explosion and lost a limb, lost an arm. But actually, at first, seemed to cope quite well, got into veterans golf and did a lot of really fun things, got into TV extra work, kept fit, was really doing really, really, really well. But then the depression, and I've only known him since 2017, I think. But the depression's got worse and worse and worse. And don't forget, when we talk about depression isn't just feeling sad. It actually stops your prefrontal cortex, executive function, from being rational. It stops that ability to be creative. All of those things where you can create, I'm talking about this thing where you can observe reality and create reality. Well, with really bad clinical depression, often the anhedonia side of it, which is not being able to feel joy, not being able to feel anything, takes over so much you can't even create anymore because you feel nothing. So that got a lot worse. And then chronic pain, because obviously that sort of when he lost an arm, his body was blown to pieces as well. So they patched him back together, but obviously hip issues, ankle issues, other arm hurts. There's loads of different complex things, tinnitus, nerve pain. And some would say, well, he's become hypochondriac and he's sort of become a product of being ill. But he's SSRI resistant. He's resistant to almost every other medication that he's ever had. He's been passed from pillar to post. He's tried privates. He's tried supplements. And he's very, very don't want to be here. There is nothing to live for anymore. I'm not even sure it would help him, because there are people that need people. That his social anxiety is so bad that he can't break through that mold now. But I think because there's this sort of attitude of, you've got to pick yourself up and get on with it. Real, true community that really sees you and really holds that space and really allows you. You mentioned earlier about language, and to be able to not think about as a man, oh, I've got to appear as a man. I've got to appear as the leader that I was. These people won't like it if I'm depressed and anxious all the time. They don't want that. So they mask and pretend all the time, don't they, a lot of people? And then, Ricky Hatton's a really good example of that, where people are just like, oh, I just didn't see it. He seemed so much better. You never know what's going on. And it's easy to judge someone and say, well, you've got to try harder.
I think with Ricky Hatton, actually, in hindsight, I think the signs were there.
Yeah.
I think I don't think he dealt well with retiring.
No.
And I think the fact that he'd come out of retirement a couple of months ago was probably some sort of either a cry for help or some sort of he wasn't happy in himself. He was searching for something.
He was,
I think. So I actually think he was training for a fight. I don't think that's the good sign that you think it is.
No.
Or some people think it is.
No, it's being lost. And I think that's what happens to a lot of vets that they just can't find their way.
It's for my own experience, it's the identity.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it's I'm now a YouTuber. Do you know how hard that is as a
I can only
title?
Imagine. Yeah,
I'm not proud of this as a title in the slightest.
Really,
at all. Almost ashamed.
What are you proud of then?
I don't know.
Yeah, so but that's really important, that moment, because that is so significant for so many vets. Even though on the surface people will go, oh, he's doing all right, he's got his YouTube channel and that's amazing that he's doing that. You're like, no, I'm ashamed of it.
It doesn't light a fire at all. It's very much a job, this, I think, and the military is very much a calling. There's a big difference there.
I can see that it still affects you now just thinking about that. It's hard though. I've not been in your shoes, obviously, but I can see that it still affects you now just thinking about that. It's hard. I've not been in your shoes, obviously, but I can see that it still affects you now just thinking about that. It's hard though. I mean, I've not been in your shoes, obviously, but I can see that it still affects you now just thinking about that. It's hard though. I mean, I've not been in your shoes, obviously, But honestly, the amount of men, and I get women as well, but more men that I've worked with that are military, there's such a profound loss in all of them. And it's heartbreaking. And I feel that although you could talk about it, and I think I've seen a couple of your clips where you've been quite emotional, and I find it really, really interesting and powerful that you do that, because so many people won't. And it's not that they can't, they will not go there. They are so fearful. And I guess that at some point they've been punished for being emotional in some way, shape or form. And so it takes someone like you. So although you're calling yourself a YouTuber, going back to some of the things that you said earlier about those morning walks and how they're connecting people to you and seeing you be emotional and not, well, certainly not appearing fearful of your emotions, that is what you're doing, not YouTuber. That's not what this is about. You can call yourself a YouTuber. You're not doing that. You're bringing community together. You're connecting people to something when they feel like they've got nothing. That's what you're doing. So that isn't anything to be ashamed of. It's far bigger than just that title.
Possibly, but I'm still not at peace with it, I don't think.
No, and that's definitely an internal job.
Yeah, but one thing I do enjoy is these conversations. I'm enjoying the learning process of this. This is like about 11th, 12th episode of this podcast.
Yeah.
And I've sat down with some awesome people, yourself included.
Thank you.
And I'm really enjoying the learning of. There's so many things that will come up. Do you drink at all at the moment?
Only very, very occasionally. It's hardly at all.
I'm seeing such a theme of this. You spoke about ADHD. The amount of people that we've had on that have been like, I've been diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm like, fucking hell. And half of them wants to go, is everyone ADHD?
I think it's all trauma. I genuinely do. The way the brain adapts to trauma presents as ADHD. And again, some people, for me, I can't do stillness. And I think because stillness led to hyperachievement, the stairs, the handle, the small moments. So for me, stillness is like, no, I don't want to do stillness. That's why I think, am I ADHD? I fit that framework. So to pathologize it, yes, I appear.
Everyone's probably got the same thing.
Yeah. There are variants of it. It's the same with autism. If you think about the epigenetic code, let's just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 equals ADHD. Let's just say that, let's say 50, this is a wild thing to say, but let's just say 50% of people have got that code, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The environment in the womb, and then if that's okay when they're born, and then if that's okay, and then in early childhood, can either ignite 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so you present with ADHD, or it lays dormant because your environment is so good that actually your nervous system and your brain adapt in a really, really healthy way. So my point being is that there's a lot of people that I think have the code. And if you think about the way life has changed, so a lot of families are now blended families, and there's been a lot of kind of fathers and mothers on both sides that haven't been as fully present because of work or because of relationship breakdowns. There's also the traumas they've brought. I was born 1978. So, that time was my parents, my dad's 77. There would have been a lot of trauma from the wars, and a lot of discipline was based on trauma. So that's getting carried down culturally. And we're seeing now, you mentioned Red Bull earlier. I tell this story a lot. I've had children that I work with that go to school with a Red Bull and a packet of crisps for breakfast. I mean, you ain't going to be concentrating if you're starting your day off like that. They're not getting nurture. They're not getting a breakfast made for them. They're not getting a clean uniform. And equally, they're on digital devices which are hijacking their dopamine system, which means that they've got less attention, less relational skills, less interpersonal skills. So we're seeing now that, yes, certainly I think from the late 70s through to now, a lot more people are presenting with that framework. And what it means is dopamine's metabolized really, really quickly. What's a really nice way of getting a little shot of dopamine, cocaine, alcohol, sex, all of those things that, people get addicted to. Now we've got phones and Netflix and all those other things, spending, gambling. And so if you look at the army, the way that's set up, what do you do after you've done a big exercise? Go out and drink. And so you're trained to get that reward. So when you come out and those exercises or those missions or those projects or whatever are gone, what are you going to do? Well, I haven't got that bit. I'll just go out and drink. And so you see a lot of people going into that spiral, but the traumas that they've had either before they've gone into the army or during are now creating that very ADHD, PTSD type brain where the dopamine system, they become socially anxious because they've lost their identity. So again, when you drink, GABA glutamate separate and create this lovely space in the middle where you're feeling the truth again of who you are, again with cocaine and other things. So I think, yeah, most people are probably presenting that way these days.
Yeah, I think the device is a big one. It's the one thing that I would say the word struggle. It's the one thing I'm frustrated with myself with at the moment for how much I'm on my phone. I wish I was off it more.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at moving it away and putting it in a different room. And I've just started doing a movie night with my daughter where it's a completely device-free thing, and we're going to watch the whole. Let her pick the snacks, and we'll watch the films. And I'm not watching. We're not watching the new Disney ones. We're watching the classics. And I saw something about this the other day. It'd be interesting to get your thoughts on this. Whether it's Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, whatever, all of those Disney movies of our childhood, the star had to go through a hard time and a transformation to get to the end.
Yeah.
Whereas all of the new ones are now the world has to bend to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a terrible, terrible lesson to teach any child because it's entitlement. It's one thing.
I'm seeing this right?
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And the journey is missing now. It's all about make the world a fluffy place for everyone, and you have to now serve me and be fluffy for me, not I have to learn how to fit in and how to be resilient and how to learn new things and how to. So it is. I'll be very careful what I say because I don't want people to think I'm a conspiracy theorist, because I'm not. I've spoken about the health system.
Send it.
Yeah, let's do this. The health system is broken. So if you've got something that you want seen urgently, if you're in a position to do so, the chances are you're going to go and get private healthcare. The education system is way outdated. A book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill was written in 1928. In 1928, Napoleon Hill said the education system is outdated, and it has been for about 100 years. So that was a really long time ago. And he was talking about Henry Ford and all these entrepreneurs. And what he was saying was that education system just sort of contains people. It doesn't allow them to become the Henry Fords of the world. Now, when we see devices and, everything you could ever want to know is in your hand. I'm not saying it's the best way to learn, but what I'm saying is the education system says, if you can't sit still, I could never sit still because I didn't like stillness, then we're going to put you in isolation and you're going to sit in that room and just do whatever we give you. You're not going to be included with everybody else. We're going to punish you because you're different, because your brain works differently. Most boys can't settle until they're 15 anyway. So it's really hard for them to sit still and concentrate. And also, since COVID, they've had so many, what they call them, locums, supply teachers. They don't even have blackboards, so everything's on a whiteboard. Even that's digital. In my daughter's school, she's 18 now, they weren't allowed pictures on the walls. It had to be a blank room, no distractions. Yet, they didn't have a consistency with the teachers because COVID had happened. So they never saw the same teacher. The teacher barely knew their names, but the ones that couldn't sit still were put in isolation on their own. And I'm thinking, well, that's broken. That doesn't teach them anything other than if you don't comply, if you're not complicit with what we want, we're going to kick you out. And then you go to the way that films are now being put together. You go to how we are not seeing in the media certain things. So certain things are hidden from us, even though we're finding out that they're happening. But then our sources of information are other people on the internet. And can we trust those people on the internet who are taking pictures of something and telling us a story? Because we haven't got the full picture. And now there's AI, so we don't even know if that's real anymore. So what information are we actually getting? It goes to structure and boundaries. And we now, absolutely, what you're doing with your daughter is so important. We now have to create those structures and boundaries again. We now have to choose what they watch. We now have to choose what they read. As parents, we can't rely on the community anymore. We need to bleed back into the community, but we've got to start in the home. Even if you're a single parent, get those old school books, get the old school poetry, get some colouring books, do arts and crafts, make cakes. do all of the stuff, go to the garden and make a mud pie, whatever it is, get your hands dirty. Don't rely on the schools or the devices to entertain your children, because if you do, they will end up being those kids that go, I want everything to come to me. And they'll sit in their rooms on their own with no friends. The friends will be on a gaming device. Not that that's a problem if it's integrated into a full life. And then what happens? Where do we go from here? Even in terms of posture, I had a doctor on my podcast, and she was saying, she did some research, and she was saying there are children going to school at the age of 4 because they've been slumped over a device since 1. They can't even sit up and hold their own body weight up. They can't sit up straight.
I don't know if this is worse than the what sits in a Red Bull for breakfast.
It is. Because at least with that, you can gradually get that out of the diet and bleed other things in. Like, if your child can't sit up straight when they go to school, I mean, if they can't sit up straight, I guarantee they're still wearing a nappy, so, and they're probably being given Red Bull as well. Or if they're, and also, I would imagine that if they're on their devices, the parents on their device too, are they even getting eye contact? How are they supposed to pay attention in class? How are these teachers supposed to cope with that? And, and I just feel like we're under-resourced in every single way. So the kid will just go, well, I'm not doing it. I don't want to do it. I don't have to do it. Because they're not learning that there are consequences, because the teachers don't have time to put the consequences in place other than to say, get out, you're on your own. Where does that lead? So I think we've got a massive, massive problem. It's up to parents.
It wasn't fit for purpose when we went through school.
No.
I left school not knowing what mortgages was, not understanding tax, not really understanding any of that sort of stuff. I did use Pythagoras theory at once because I did scaffolding, yeah.
Wow.
You need to know the size of a brace, and I was like, actually, let me A squared, B squared, C squared the shit out of this a second. I actually did use it for once, but it's like I've used it once in 41 years of my life. I feel like there's an over specialization and depth of learning in subjects that are a lot of bollocks.
Yeah.
And not the broad range of can you milk a cow? Can you make bread? Like, I never learned any of that at school.
No.
Probably should have done.
No, because they stopped home economics. I mean, I made 1 or 2 dishes when I was at school, in middle school. I think one...
Did a pizza, I think.
I did something like that. One was something like I think I chose a sweet and sour Chinese dish, and a potato where you took the potato out and then mashed it with other things and put it back in and baked it. So I did that. They were the 2 things. And then they stopped doing home economics. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, I do know how to bake bread now because I wanted to learn. But if you are a man and you don't want to learn how to bake bread, well, you're probably not ever going to do it. Whereas if you eat fresh bread and you've made it yourself, it's such a nice feeling, especially with a little bit of a beef stew or something. It's nice to do those things. Why aren't we teaching that? Why aren't we teaching taxes? Because the other day, a friend dealing with something legally in Spain. So I wanted to be able to help them write the letter, but to make it easier for the person on the other end, I put the letter through ChatGPT and got it turned into Spanish. So where they want you to do a language, I think that's wonderful. But what I'm saying is, why don't you say to that kid, you can learn Spanish, you can learn to cook, you can do something physical like learn to build scaffolding. What are you going to pick? Like, let the child pick. Yeah. Because now, maybe not then, but now, you don't really need to learn Spanish because you can do Duolingo in your own time. If you're going to go to live in Spain, you can do that yourself.
You see the new AirPods? So the Apple have brought the new AirPod Pros.
I heard about this.
So you could be speaking in Spanish, I could be speaking in English. You will hear me in your language and I will hear you in my language. You don't need to learn another language. It's over.
Mad.
So all of the things that we were told coming through school, you need to learn a language. You probably should, right?
Yeah, it's good for your brain.
And I wish I could. But you don't actually need to. Because like you said, you can write legal letters in Spanish because of AI.
Yeah.
You're not going to have a calculator in your pocket. Wrong. I am, actually. So you're totally wrong on that one. Like, you're not going to be able to just look something up in an encyclopedia. Wrong, by the way, because I am. Like, all of these things that they said we needed to learn, but I don't know about really basic things that I really need to, like, don't get credit cards at 35% because you're never going to pay it off.
Yeah.
Here's, like, and why does anything take 5 years to learn?
I know. Like, especially because we know actually that we're really good at learning something if we enjoy it. That's my point.
Couldn't they do 6-week blocks on this topic?
Yeah, it'd be really good.
Topic, and you touch on it, you get real good proficiency on it, and you don't need to really...
Well, when you think about how the brain works, repetition is recognition. Neurons that fire together wire together. So if you did a concentrated time on a subject that you enjoyed, you'd be an expert in it. So by the time you leave school, so there's 3 subjects that you really love, by the time you leave, you've done 6-week rotations on those subjects. You are now an expert. What confidence does that give you going into the world? These are the things I love. This is what I'm really good at. Go to a job interview. They ask you questions. You are like, yeah, got the job. You love this. I can see you're passionate for it. You know everything about it. You've spent the last 10 years learning it. You are amazing. We want you. That instills confidence, purpose, identity. What they're doing in the education system is to just completely break it down so that we are reliant. I mean, look at digital currency and digital ID and all these things. It's all about control. It's not about feeding the individual good self-esteem and confidence and purpose and identity. It's definitely not about that anymore. So when we look at that from a psychological perspective and then from a physiological perspective, more and more isolation, less and less movement, more and more postural changes. They're saying now what we were seeing in terms of erectile dysfunction happening in men of, in their 40s is now happening in the 20s because they've had so much exposure to porn. So their bodies physiologically, cellularly, biologically are changing and they are becoming more and more dysfunctional.
We are turning into Wall-E, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We are. So it's really, really scary. So again, we can change that with the domino effect. That's how it works, one step at a time, and having accountability, having some sense of community. I do go to a gym, but I don't really enjoy the gym as much as I enjoy being outside. So finding what you enjoy. And if you're not doing it with someone, because I prefer to run alone, I don't like to talk and run at the same time. Again, having someone that's also going to check in with you and say, did you go today? Because then you're in competition, and competition's good. Winning and losing is good. It teaches us resilience. It teaches us determination. So I think, again, these are the things that we need to make sure we're doing for our children or our friends, and to not be ashamed of the times where you're just like, I actually want to die, and making that a more normal conversation. Because I think most people at some point or another really feel like that.
I think it's probably more than certainly way more than admitting.
Yeah.
I want to touch on your morning routine. We spoke about my little morning walks, and my morning walks have been phenomenal. And I was just looking for a little bit of extra content. Didn't really know what I was going to do with it, and I thought, I'm doing these walks, and while I was doing them, it was also summer. I had to buy a light now because I do them. I'm up at 5:30 and I'm out by 6 usually, so I've had to buy a little light that sits on top of the camera because otherwise you ain't seen me. When I was doing them in the summer, it was fine because it was, sunrise was like 5 a.m. It was already light before I got out there. I like to try and get that done, get the gym done. By 8 o'clock, I'm usually back home, and I do morning routine with my daughter, and then I'm lucky enough that I get to take her to school every single day, and it is one of the best bits. I am happy that I got to do that. I get to do that. What's your morning routine look like? Because I know you've got cold showers in there, and I'm such a bitch with them. I can't. I did about 60 days of an ice bath in my garden. It's not for me.
Is it because you're going too cold?
My wife can step into it like she's walking through a door, and I've got to walk around like I'm fighting Mike Tyson in the garden before I can get in there.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Well, it's not for everybody, for a start. So some people prefer heat to cold.
Loved it when I did it. Can't get in. I can get in, and I feel the benefit of when I've got out of it, but I cannot.
Is it because? Well, it's not that you can't; it's that you won't.
Yeah, I mean, I know Amy's in the corner here. We literally had we did a promotion for Fix Manchester around the corner, which is a sauna with an ice bath thing.
Yeah.
How many goes is it? 20 something goes to get in the plunge. Wasn't even cold, was it?
Wow.
Hilarious.
So what's your brain saying?
Do not get in that water.
Why?
Don't know.
Are you quite hot anyway? So do you think that you feel it more?
Maybe.
Yeah. Because I think if your temperature's slightly higher, that cold feels colder.
It's colder.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that cold. It's not that cold. And I'm talking like we wasn't even putting ice in our ice bath a lot of the time. It got to winter, it was really cold, but like I'm talking in like September, it ain't that cold.
Okay, I think there's something that happens in your body in the way that you breathe where you feel like you're losing control. And I don't think it's conscious. I think unconsciously, that bit where I think that bit for you is unconsciously something that's reminding you of something else. So your body goes, no, that is not what, you're not supposed to feel that. Because actually you're not supposed to. Think about it primitively, we fish. So the fisherman has to go a bit deeper into the water. It's a cold day. He just walks in. He knows he's getting the fish. He's focusing on the food and the hunt rather than, oh, this is good for me. So the reward is feeding him and his family. So he just walks in. It's a bit cold, but because he's not thinking about that, he's more thinking about catching the fish. His focus is entirely different.
Ella, do you think people catch fish with their hands?
Well, I like to think it's possible.
They're going headlocking fish.
I think at some point or another they did.
Okay, let's pretend they did.
Or at least...
You know they mostly sit on the side, right?
Just like with a can of beer, yeah. but let's go back 400 years. And they had maybe they had a net.
Okay.
But they still had to go fairly deep. So they are not thinking of cold in the same way. They're thinking of food. I think you're thinking of cold. I think cold makes your body react. I think you feel like you're losing control in that moment.
I completely freeze. And I'm going, get in the water. I'm shouting at myself, get in the water. And
what happens when you know that moment where your body meets the cold? What does your body do?
I make a stupid yelp, usually, which I think everyone does.
No.
Right, okay. And then after 10 seconds, I'm fine.
What's happening in that 10 seconds after the yelp?
Fast breathing.
Right.
Because it's cold.
Yeah.
But then after that, I'm okay.
And what happens?
And I can stay for ages.
Yeah, me too. I can be in that, but actually it can be too long because you shut down too much and then you're really tired. In that few seconds where you're breathing really rapidly, do you do that as well? Tighten up. What do you think your body is seeing that as? That moment of rapid breathing, tension. But why would that happen? Think about what the body is doing that for. If the body is rapidly breathing and tensing, what is the body thinking?
It's in danger.
Right. It's that bit that's the problem for you. You can't bypass that signal. You can, but you're struggling to bypass the danger signal. Mm. So you know it's not dangerous, but internally...
Oh, if I'm getting in... Well, that one I didn't get in.
Yeah.
When we were filming it.
Yeah.
Which now, and obviously, I've got a whole film career filming me not getting in the water.
Yeah.
Brilliant. What a waste of a day. But even when it's just me in my garden, like, it'll take me... I cannot just, like... My wife is annoying because she will just walk in and just sit in it and go like, fuck's the matter with you? And I've been like...
But her body's not... Her body hasn't got a mapping and an experience where that felt genuinely like death. So it's all unconscious.
I've had hypothermia. Is that it?
Well, yeah. That's probably...
I fell through the ice in Scotland.
How bad was it?
I was jackhammering. I had to get warmed back up.
And then how did you feel when that was happening?
Cold.
Apart from cold, were you scared?
No, just cold. It wasn't deep water. It was 5-6 feet. It wasn't deep.
I think there's something to do with control and danger. I think your brain reads that more. There's a stronger current of danger that runs through your body. Could well be that there's been times in your life where when your heart rate is that rapid and your body's that tense, it's because something really significantly dangerous has happened.
Well, that's the adrenaline thing.
Yeah. So I think your body reads that as danger. So actually your unconscious brain-body system says, no way. That's how an animal would react.
Well, yeah, it's literally like, I'm going, get in the fucking water.
Yeah.
And I go, 3, 2, 1, and can't.
But that's significant because your cognitive 5% is fighting against 95% that is saying, do not do it. Again, it's not necessarily, that's not the sort of thing that most people would go for hypnosis for, but I do a lot of phobia work where it's life limiting. So it's just about rewriting and using hypnosis as part of that whole neuroelectrics thing. What's the point of when your body learnt that message. What's the emotion attached to that message? What's the self-perception attached to that message? And do you want it enough to change it? Because if you don't, we won't. It's fine. It's not life-limiting, so you don't ever have to go in cold water.
No, it's just something that... Anyway, we were supposed to be...
It's interesting.
We were supposed to be talking about your
morning
routine.
I know, but I can't help doing that because I'm so curious. But the morning routine, so it starts with, I always like to try and connect brain to heart. We talked about the heart's resonance earlier, and I think that it's really, really important to ground into that coherence, because most of the time we are separated and fragmented. We've got our work hat on, we've got our dad hat on, so it's about bringing that coherence in. And I know we talked about gratitude earlier, but just to set that intention, because I think it's so important to go, yeah, it's grey outside. Yes, it's raining. Yes, the dogs are going to get really muddy when they go out for a walk. Yes, it's going to take half an hour to clean up afterwards. But I love my dogs. I love moving my body. I love having this sense of health that I want to get out of bed and I want to enjoy the day. So I start like that and I just do that really easy, gentle breath work. Then I go downstairs, and this is something that's quite popular at the minute and I enjoy it. I spend 10 minutes on a vibration plate. And that's just to get that lymphatic drainage. It's also really good for parasympathetic. So instead of being in fight flight, it helps to ground your body into a nice balanced nervous system. And then I know it's quite early on in the day, but if I've got emails or messages to do, I get on my exercise bike, usually for 10 to 20 minutes, do my emails and messages, get them out of the way, then take the dogs out for a walk and move my body again. So these are all those sort of natural things that I'm doing. I drink some water as well. And then I don't eat food until about between 12 and 1. So again,
when we go?
Usually around 7. So I have the morning where I'm not eating. Not everyone wants to fast. And actually with women, it's not always hormonally efficient to fast. But I prefer it that way. I'm more focused actually without food. So I get all of that done. And then I go to work and get my clinic open and see my clients. But I always start off with grounding into that sense of what am I going to look forward to today? Set that intention, then move onto the vibration, get that parasympathetic nervous system, move the body, get things done, move the body again with the dogs, enjoy a bit of nature, and then I crack on. And if I can fit in the gym later on in the day, I do. But that's the way I start every day. And I think it's really important for a lot of people, including me, that you have the same routine every day. Because if you come away from that routine, you break the habit. And habits are so important. I go back to what I was saying before when I lost all the weight and I didn't have structure and I was sort of winging it a little bit. And I ended up being really poorly with eating disorders because I need structure. I need routine. And I think, again, it's not a lot. That whole routine is probably about 40 minutes. That's not a lot for you to start your day really positively. And I think that's what it's just making that choice every day. And of course, there are times when you're poorly and you can't do it, but that's kind of, okay, how poorly am I? Because you can always do one part of that. You can always go out for a walk, even if you feel awful.
Get up early and drink your water.
Yeah, you can do all of those things, but that's basically what I do. And I keep it really simple for a reason. I've seen people really overcomplicate the morning routine. They can't stick to it. So if you have those 3 or 4 things in every day that are achievable, and I don't want to sound like that cheesy guru, but it has to be achievable. It has to be something you enjoy, and it has to have a reason. So again, heart-mind coherence, intention, parasympathetic, get your nervous system balanced, move your body, get some tasks done, get outside in nature. Simple. And some people would say, oh, I have to get up with the sun and I've got to do. I'm like, that's okay, but will you do that for the next 20 years? Because I can do mine for the next 20 years. There's nothing to stop me. But it just gets everything moving and it gets everything feeling, this is familiar, this is good, I've got this. So yes, there's an element of control there, but more than anything, it's about having something that I know in my body it's not even thought about. In the same way you brush your teeth, you don't think, oh, I've got to brush my teeth. You just do it. I think make it as simple as that and habit stacking. That's why I do my emails and messages while I'm moving my body, because I think that's really important. You can fit everything in if you do it properly. A really good book for people, it's a basic one, but it's a good one, is Atomic Habits. I think for anyone that's really struggling setting those routines, it's a really good book to read. And also, I mentioned it before, but The Body Keeps a Score, another very good one to understand the internal system, but the habit stacking is really important too.
Checklist Manifesto, I would say, is a good one.
Yeah, it's a very good, yeah.
It goes into a lot of how hospitals killed a lot of transmitted sort of infections.
Yeah.
and you're like, well, of course doctors wash their hands. Not if they don't have a checklist. They don't.
Yeah.
My morning routine's very similar. So I try to be up at 5:30. If I've been traveling or whatever, I can knock that till 7. But generally 5:30 to get everything done. I'm usually out of the house within 15 minutes. And it's the same thing. I get up, I have a piss, I go and weigh in. I've got a digital scale, so it keeps track of where I'm at every single day. I have some water. I don't try and have caffeine for 90 minutes. I do try and fast until 11 or 12. That's,
Same.
a good 7 or so hours after getting up. I get out on my walk, and it's 2 mile or 6 mile. 6 mile twice a week, 2 mile Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Wednesdays and Sundays I go a bit longer. I go do my sort of mobility routine because of my busted up ankles and calves.
Yeah.
So it's like 30 minutes. I do that every single morning. And if anything's meditation, because I don't do any of that, it's probably that.
Yeah.
And I try and do that without headphones.
Yeah.
And I just try and be in the middle of doing that intentionally almost.
Well, meditation really is just about clearing the clutter and being present. And I think most people that don't do meditation find that when they exercise. So for me, I love to run. I've had a constant knee injury, so I've not been able to run like I used to, but walking does it for me as well. That's probably where I get into the most meditative state, is when I'm walking, and it's just to be mindfully walking as well. So again, I think a lot of this sounds too simple to be true. Actually, I'm launching a brand in the middle of November. It's called Novus DNA, and it's a longevity stroke wellness care brand, but it's got supplements involved in it. And the reason for that is that I always taking supplements, but you end up taking loads of different things. You don't know what you're taking and why. The bioavailability is awful because it's full of crap. And I just started to think, why am I taking these supplements? Why am I doing this? Because I want to be better. So I started a very long time ago, started to discuss this journey, having the clinic, you see, and seeing people with various different things, which I just think, especially with ADHD, change your diet, move your body, use supplementation if you can before you go on to controlled drugs. Maybe there's some things here that could be really, really useful, but don't take 26 things. Take maybe 2 or 3. Vitamin D, magnesium, lion's mane if you're someone that presents as ADHD. C, by keeping a tracker, again, doing your habits, keeping a tracker of if this food, this exercise, this supplement routine is making you feel better. Because if it is, then we're on to something. So I became really interested in that side of things in terms of, yes, we talk about longevity, but for me, it's more about being the healthiest you can be whilst you're here, because you never know when it's going to end. Actually, the truth is it could be taken away tomorrow, but I always like to be in the pursuit of something. I always like to be thinking in terms of longevity. What's the next thing? What's the next thing to be excited about? Because actually then I'm alive and I'm present, and I don't fear death for that reason, because I've always got something to feel alive about. And that's why I said I start the day with connecting those two things. I'm excited about life, and I feel grateful and blessed, and I feel lucky. And I think that's what I always like to start with. Like I genuinely am grateful that I'm here, and I know it's not going to last forever. And then when this consciousness goes and I become part of the ecosystem again, I don't know what I'm going to be, but I'm not going to be this version of me forever. So why would I not enjoy it? And I think that's the biggest thing we can take away, is that however hard life is, and most people have had something really deeply traumatic, and several people have had more than one thing. But actually, what does it feel like when you've finished that run at the gym or lifted that weight, and you take that really deep breath afterwards, that really beautiful, happy sigh? You never had it? Okay.
No, I've spoke about this so many times with people. Like, people go, "Oh, do you get all the happy?" No, I smash myself to smithereens when I go to the gym.
So it's self-punishment.
Yeah, probably. And but I get the dopamine from the identity of being the guy that does that. I think, rather than I don't get the we did it sort of thinking.
I never enjoy it whilst I'm doing it. Yeah, I'm like that. I hate it whilst I'm doing it, but it's when you've just completed it. And especially after a run, when you lay down and it feels like there's more air in your lungs. Do you know what I mean by that? No? Okay.
Sort of.
I've had that feeling. It just feels like there's more air in my lungs. Mainly after a run. I actually really hate doing weights, but I do them because it's my age and I have to, because otherwise I get osteoporosis. But I much prefer that lovely feeling after cardio where you've smashed it. I hate running, but I love it at the same time for that feeling. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I can run. Can you imagine not being able to do some of the things that you can do? That would be hell.
Well, I've got a calf injury at the moment, and whenever I've got any level of injury, I do get melodramatic and be like, I'm not going to be able to run again.
I know, I do that. And it's like, this is it. Like, my life's over. I've got a little bit of a poorly elbow, and now I feel like my life's over for it and that's when I realised how important my health is. Nothing else really matters apart from health. And whether that's mental, emotional or physical, I think we take that for granted way too much.
I think they're all more closely aligned than people want to admit.
Well, they're not separated at all. They're all the same thing. If you couldn't get out and go to the gym for 6 weeks, and let's say in 6 weeks you were thinking, okay, I think I can start going to the gym, and then you went to the gym and you just couldn't do what you could do before, you would feel awful. Emotionally, mentally, physically, you would feel awful. So, and that's when we talk about gratitude, going back to that sort of thing that makes everyone feel a bit uncomfortable because it doesn't seem sincere. That's what we need to be grateful for, because everybody's got something to be grateful for. That warm cup of tea, or that trip to the supermarket where you've filled your trolley up, whereas somebody else can't do that. You know, we've got to stop thinking that we're poor me. There's always something to be grateful for, always.
Well, yeah, anybody that's watching this on a smartphone, you've got plenty of things to be grateful for.
Exactly that.
Right, Ella, where can people find more about your work in the clinic?
I think the easiest place would be Ella McCrystal on Instagram, it's hard to say, ellamccrystal.com, and the Northampton Clinic, so it's northamptonclinic.com. But everything that I do is on Instagram, so it's the first and easiest place to go to.
All right, well, thank you very much. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. We didn't actually go completely to plan, to be honest with you. But
well, that's what I do. I distract.
We did kind of cover everything.
Yeah, I think we did. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming. This is awesome. Please go and check out and bang any questions in, because I think we'll get you back when your new book comes out, if that's all right.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'd love to.
So any questions for Ella, and we'll throw them at her next time she's here.
Thank you.